the essential, involuntary, like the breathing, he said, okay? Your heart beating.
As before, you may be wondering, hey, isn't that controlled by your spinal cord? Yes, some of them are controlled by the spinal cord, but some of the reflexes, like your sneezing, coughing, those are controlled by your medulla oblongata, all right? The idea is the reflexes are not controlled by your thinking part of the brain. None of the reflexes are controlled by the forebrain. That's why they're even called reflexes. But the medulla does control some of your reflexes as well. So these are the two major functions of the medulla. Okay, what about the cerebellum? Getting a little crowded. I hope you can see them apart. So again, I'm going to put some division over here. Anyways, so what does cerebellum do? Well, cerebellum also has some involuntary function, but it's a little different. One of its function is to maintain balance. And what I mean by this is, if you want to do even the simplest of the simplest tasks, like walking or maybe holding a cup, these things requires careful calculation, coordination. You have to think about where the gravity is and all of those stuff, right? If you try to build a robot, it's then you actually see how complicated those things are. But we do it with ease. That's because of our cerebellum, because it is the one that maintains balance. And along with that, another major function is motor memory. Motor memory. What's that?
Motor.
Well, think of riding a bicycle. With the first time when you were trying to learn the bicycle, you were using a lot of your forebrain. You were learning. You were learning to get balance. You were learning how the pedal works. You were learning maybe how to do the tring and everything. All those things you're learning. But once you learn that, once you've done enough practice, now when you want to ride your bicycle, you don't even think about it. We say it has become our second nature, right? All things happen automatically. How? It's the cerebellum. That's what we call as motor memory. Another example could be, let's say when you're typing on a keyboard, if you have enough practice, you don't have to look down anymore. You don't have to worry about which keys are where. It just automatically happens. Motor memory. So all those things are controlled by the cerebellum. And you know how I can remember this? I remember this by remembering that, when people drink alcohol, it's their cerebellum that gets affected. Think about it. If your cerebellum gets affected, your balance gets affected. And that's why people who are intoxicated, they can't balance themselves. They will be walking funny and everything. They may no longer be in a position.
Well, when they pull you over, they suspect that you've been drinking. What's one of the tests that cops do? Do you know, Jason?
It was a combination of things, but usually, checking your balance.
Checking your balance is one. Some cops in the old days, they ask you to recite the alphabet, right? They ask you to recite the alphabet. It has something to do with memory. Simple. Okay? I'd say, would you like me to recite it backwards from Z to A? They'll never catch me drinking and driving because I don't do that. So don't do that, okay? Thanks to Uber and Lyft, drink responsibly, okay? So let's go back.
To ride a bicycle. It's actually one of the reasons why we say don't drink and drive, because your motor memory gets affected. So even the most basic things that usually we think it's easy for us to do, like while driving, that gets affected. All right. So that's how I remember the functions of the cerebellum. All right. So finally, you may be wondering, what about the midbrain? So these are midbrain. We're now going to look at the parts of the midbrain. Midbrain also controls some of the involuntary functions. For example, when you shine light in your eyes, your pupils become smaller. That is controlled by your midbrain. So the midbrain also controls some of your involuntary functions, but we're not going to look at that. And this is pretty much it for us. Now, since this screen itself contains the entire summary, why don't you try pausing the video and then
Okay, give you a few seconds to look at it. Okay, it's nice to be able to dissect the brain like that, okay, and know the different functions of each of its parts, okay? Okay. Let's try this, okay, before I let you go for a quick break. While your mind is analyzing this question, your heart is beating and your stomach is digesting the food you ate. You're not even aware of such functions of your stomach or heart. Which part of the brain performs these involuntary life-sustaining activities? You see Christine try to, rub the forefront of your brain? Your forebrain? Okay, answer. They said C, medulla oblongata. Let's try. I'll click this one for you. Correct. Good job. Okay, next question. Okay. The peripheral nervous system carries information to touch, smell, sound to the central nervous system, where this information is processed to derive meaning and make a decision. Which of the following are components of the peripheral nervous system? Peripheral, remember, we have the autonomic, central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, carries information of touch, smell, sound. Answer, and I'll choose it for you. Jason, you missed this part. I'd like to test how much you've retained in your brain. D, any more guesses? D, let's see if it's D. What was the answer? Check. Try again, which means it's not D. Okay, Stormy said A. Let's try A. Correct. Okay. Spinal nerves arising from the spinal cord are the component of the peripheral nervous system. They carry information to and from the spinal cord. Remember? Okay. So the nervous system, the central nervous system is composed of the brain and the spinal cord. Okay. Next one. Did I check that one? Move on. Okay. A drunk person often loses balance as he walks. This happens because alcohol also affects the part of the brain that controls body balance. This is the last topic. Which part of the brain controls body balance? Stormy's fast. You remember this. Cerebellum. Good work. Okay, last one. Okay, identify the color of the three objects around you. Now think about the process through which you were able to do this. Obviously, the information about the objects was collected by your eyes and passed to your brain where it was processed. Remember the picture of the puppy? Okay. Which part of the brain receives and processes the information from the eyes? I'm going by your answers. You answered B, the forebrain, and let's check. Good job. Okay. It's nice to be able to dissect the brain like what I said and be able to know the functions of each of its part. It's very awesome. And this is a very good introduction to your nervous system before we start jumping to the drugs, okay? Like what I said, the way I do pharmacology is I start off with a review of the anatomy and physiology, the different parts or organs, okay? The system that the drugs affect. And then after we discuss the different parts or organs, then we discuss the diseases. After we discuss the diseases, we discuss the drugs that treat these diseases or help alleviate the symptoms of these diseases. So you can put them all together. And then it comes into like a big aha. Now I understand. That's why our students are strong when it comes to pharmacology, because I don't just ask you to memorize the top 200 drugs. We actually discuss and explain the different parts of the body that these drugs affect and the diseases, okay? So, real quick, how'd you like the references today? Elizabeth, 1 to 5.
The first one, I thought he talked too fast, so I'd give him a 3.5.
Okay.